There's a lovely patch of slippery jack mushrooms. They're actually quite yummy, probably quite underrated. And they love to grow near pine trees. So we'll just let them be dried a little bit by the sun, and then we'll take them a bit later, so they're not so slippery. I think all my life I felt very connected to wild foods. I guess in part thanks to also my grandparents, both my Ofafi grandpa and my großmama on my father's side. I would always go out and get dandelion and bärlauch, which is like bear leek, bear garlic, and berries, and they would always go into nature, into the forest in Switzerland. And I know that in many past lives I've been the hunter-gatherer, woman or man. I've always admired the American Indians, of course. I always wanted to help them. And I traveled there first time in '79. I have met many beautiful ancient people, medicine people, elders. They're disappearing everywhere because their way of life, their land, has been largely stolen. But then later I realized that there's indigenous people everywhere on the planet. Doesn't matter whether you are brown, red, black, white or yellow skin. And I know in Switzerland people have been living in harmony with Mother Earth for thousands of years. And when Jamie and I travel in our little camper van now, it's been over almost 8 years since we've sold our property in New Zealand. And we always feel very much at peace in mountainous areas where there are still traditional farmers, small farmers, people often coming from many generations where they have had a small, sustainable, self-sufficient way of life with no small number of animals. Here where we are, in Sicily, in the mountains, people have mainly sheep, and they make fresh ricotta cheese every day. And I believe that, just recently, I think the whole world's been kind of a bit occupied with what happened in America. A lot of people are against globalism, against corporations which want to really control and dominate the world. It's crazy that even as now it's clear that Trump will not sign the TTPA, the Prime Minister in New Zealand, for example, John Key, still says, he's going to do an agreement anyway, which clearly gives rights to corporations over the rights of the people. So in a way, there's like two systems. One is this globalized system, and then the other is kind of a vanishing world where traditional farmers, traditional people, cultures have been living in harmony with Mother Earth for thousands of years, whether, of course, way back in many places they were actually nomadic. They didn't cultivate, and then over time they started to maybe have sheep or other animals. And I believe it's really important that we, with our choices, are conscious of which world are we supporting. For example, with tourism, let's fly to Bali. Well, what's the consequence of the traditional ancient cultures of Bali? Jamie and I, we've been to Bali, and it's sad. Every 2 meters somebody is trying to sell you a t-shirt. And of course I'm not blaming those people, but often in our modern world, in our globalized world, in our urban world, we are then thirsting for traditional culture, for real culture, for exotic culture. And so we go on a holiday to South America or to Bali, and through our own activity, we end up destroying those cultures. Even worse, in my opinion, is white people who invite shamans to fly up from South America to do some ceremony. Well, I have met with many, many elders, and I haven't met one who would approve of this. The true medicine people help their own people and are connected to Mother Earth. True shamans live very much in harmony with nature. To call yourself a shaman in Sydney, sorry, I just find that really ridiculous. And it is undermining those few true shamans who still living. Just read about one person, 14 years he lived in the jungle in the Amazon. And no, he wasn't born into a traditional village. And yes, he was an indigenous person. But so he kind of reconnected to true shamanism by living 14 years completely self-reliant in the jungle. And Jamie and I, we wish we could live 100% on wild food. It's not easy to do in our world, and maybe there's also a few things we don't want to go without, like pasta, especially in Italy, where they're handmade often still. And this is part of the ancient traditional culture as well. So I think it's just important that we are conscious. What am I doing? Which world am I supporting with my own actions? And I believe ultimately we cannot with one hand take money from this destructive culture and with the other wanting to help to create a better world. Likewise, we have to stop to expect the government to do things for us. No, we have to come back to doing things to be more self-reliant, self-sufficient, to be responsible for our own health, for, maybe for the education of our children, rather than just blaming the education system. Well, for example, in New Zealand, it's still allowed that you homeschool. And maybe some 5, 6, 7 families can come together and homeschool in a group, for example. In every aspect of your life, I believe most diseases can be healed if we look at actually what is at the core of the dis-ease, what is not at ease in myself. I've done a lot of work with people with cancer. There's over 60 different, after 60 years of cancer research, we have over 100 types of cancer. Cancer is a very specific dis-ease. And when you actually look at what is behind this in me, how am I feeling, how am I living, if I feel unworthy as a mother, for example, then my breast cancer is related to this. And as I heal and transform how I'm feeling, which is connected to most likely my own mother and her mother, then I am rebalancing this energy in myself. And in the end, my book, Sacred Journey, is very much about how can we grow from a human being who reacts to what we see in the world to a soul being who realizes we've chosen this journey. We are the ones co-creating experiences based on our own choices. And I believe that's the true work, not to accumulate knowledge through the internet or books or so-called universities, but no, through actual life, through actual being conscious, feeling about my body, about my emotions, about my thoughts, about how I live, about my choices. And I believe that's the work we've come to do. And to experience on this earth, what are the consequences of my choices? How do I affect the world with what I do, what I consume, who I am? And so let us make those choices which actually help to create a better world. A world of the heart and love and peace and in harmony with Mother Earth, as we used to do it for hundreds of thousands of years. as hunter-gatherers. But we obviously had to experience this development, this different world, so now we can make conscious choices to reconnect with what is of real value for us, our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. A wonderful example of, how we can live much more as a community and in harmony with nature is right here in Sicily. And I think both Jamie and I have been really overwhelmed by the generosity of the people, by how enthusiastic they are, talking about fungi in Italian and about wild plants and plants for flowers for the bees and we always talk to the traditional farmers, of course, but yeah, it's been amazing how our love, I guess, and respect for the people coming from the heart, how much this has been coming back to us, people giving us all sorts of things just out of the blue, people we have only met 2 minutes ago, give us lemons and bread. And one man I talked to about mushrooms, next he pulls out the bag, gives us half of all the mushrooms he just found, chanterelles and other beautiful mushrooms. And they all talk about, how corrupt the government is, how bad the government is. But they are doing what I'm talking about. They are still connected to this traditional value, this traditional respect for each other, for community, and for wild food. And this is wonderful. Of course, they're blessed because they have the ocean and they have, mountains like Mount Etna is 3,300 meters above sea level. So you have those wide range of attitudes to grow food, all sorts of fruits and wild fruits and herbs and mushrooms and berries, and so and I believe both Jamie and I believe that this is really what it's about. Getting out of the rat race and making conscious choices, not selfish just for ourselves, but being conscious and aware of, how we're fitting into this community of other people, traditional values and cultures. Some of the mushrooms we found today. Next we're going to go and dry them a little bit and clean them, and then we might even dry some, either in paper bags, brown paper bags, or even in our dryer. We found a 30-year-old dryer in an op shop in Switzerland, exactly the same one I used to have. They're yummy, of course, in sauces and risottos and all sorts of things. So thank you, Mother Earth, for this beautiful gift. And we'll see you some other time. Lots of love. Bye-bye.